Hey, welcome to another episode of Sabine's Common Sense. I'm your host, Sabine, the Purpose Lawyer. Thank you for listening and thank you for helping me be on purpose. So, today we're going to talk about legacy again, but this time I'm talking about another great Kobe Bryant. And we're going to get into why him setting up his legacy was one of the best things that he could do for his family and how he positioned them to make some major moves that they're making now in business and in the industry. Then I have the pleasure of interviewing a good friend and mentor. Her name is Sandra Radna. She is an attorney. She has over 25 years of experience and she focuses primarily on divorce law. But one of the interesting things about her is that she's found a way to make a small firm super successful before entrepreneurship was powerful. And anybody who is who is an attorney or knows anything about the law business, it is a difficult business to scale. So she's going to give us some good tips. But even if you're not an attorney and you're not running a law firm, she tells us some things that any entrepreneur can actually use to grow and scale their business and make it successful. So stay tuned for that. All right. So Kobe, let me tell you how Kobe, not only was he a mogul, but he thought like a mogul, he did business like a mogul, and he left this earth like a mogul, right? And how did he do that? Because he planned ahead of time. He had a trust set up for his family for quite some time now, even while he was young. Like we know, unfortunately, that we lost Kobe when he was 41 a couple of years ago. And although that's unfortunate, a lot of times people don't think that they need to do planning early on in life because they're young. But like we've learned time and time again, that life is short, can be short. I want to put that out there. Life can be short and we just never know, when your time is going to come. But especially somebody like him who was, worth millions, very successful in his career. And so he had a trust that not only did he leave, his assets to his wife, but also to his children. And in the event that he wasn't here. So what happened is now that he passed, his wife is able to be the trustee of his trust. And what that means is she just, steps in and picks up right where he left off without any court interference or court interaction. They did actually go to court when he passed because of the fact that his 6-month-old hadn't been added to the trust, which is not crazy because it was 6 months. Maybe they didn't get around to it, but because of that, they had to go to court to just say, hey, he probably would have wanted to add this child because he did make amendments over the years to add his other children, which is also a great thing. So that was that. But besides that, nobody knows what's in his estate because it's all private. Trusts do not have to be filed with the court, unless there's some great circumstance that it has to be brought into court. But even then, there will be a great deal of care to only really disclose what absolutely needs to be disclosed. So awesome. He has a trust. His wife steps in. Now she is the trustee, which means she gets to run his businesses, his affairs. She owns his name, his likeness, all of that stuff, his intellectual property, trademarks, etc. And so what happened was he had a deal with Nike, and Nike was putting out sneakers, or what do I call it? Some people don't call it sneakers, but I forget what they call it. But anyways, you know what it is. He had a deal with Nike, and when he passed away, they were doing sort of some shady stuff where they were putting out limited edition sneakers that she did not authorize or agree, right, with them, and they were putting them out in limited amounts. So you know what happens, just like Jordans. You put them out, they sell out in minutes, and then people resell them for high amounts. And she didn't like that because she said that's not Kobe, right? That's not his legacy. Like she wanted his fans to be able to celebrate him and be a part of his ongoing legacy. So she canned Nike because they weren't doing the right thing. Again, she had the power now. Had he not had a trust, she probably would have still been in court, trying to work out the kinks of what is all in his estate, what does she get, how does she get access to it, when, not to mention taxes, etc. You know the drill. We talked about it with Prince, right? So now that she had that, she was able to just step into his shoes, be the businesswoman, can Nike because they weren't doing the right thing. And then she filed all these trademarks, which indicates to us that they got something cooking probably something that maybe we'll see, on an anniversary or something like that on with Kobe and his brand. So it looks like she's coming out with a new brand for him. We don't know when. We just have to wait and see. But she followed things like Mamba, Mambasita, which was, in memory of her daughter Gigi, play Gigi's way, things like that. So a number of trademarks, even his signature. But I want you to focus on the fact that that's powerful, that she has the power to now do this and carry on her husband's legacy in the way that she wanted to, the way that he would have wanted. And when she's gone, now her children will be able to step in and have those same benefits, right? This is how you leave a legacy. So he wasn't just doing it for TV, doing it for the gram. He was living it in real life, living like a mogul, right? And so now they'll get his inheritance. They'll be able to move on with his legacy and continue how he actually wanted it. So now we're about to get into my interview, right? And so that this was the first time that I interviewed someone in the studio on Zoom. So please forgive me. Me and my producer, we went through my computer. We turned off all notifications except for my email. So you will hear those dings. I'm really an attorney that's practicing, and so I am busy. But please forgive me. You won't hear that again next time. But stay tuned for the interview, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, good morning, Sandra. How are you?
Hi, Sabine. How are you?
I am good. Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be talking to you this morning.
Yes, I'm very excited.
So, Sandra Radna is my guest today. She's an amazing woman. She is an experienced attorney with over 25 years of experience. She runs a successful law firm that is constantly doing wonderful things. She has been recognized by the National Institute of Trial Lawyers, Long Island Business News, New York Times, USA Today, and many more. And she has been interviewed by NPR and some other media outlets. So this is really a pleasure. And she's a friend and a mentor. So thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my great pleasure. Love talking to you, and to do it this way is really nice.
Yeah, awesome. So Sandra, I like to start the interviews off with like something personal because of the fact that, a lot of times you're an attorney, you're a professional, people just know, what you do, and that's like who you are, right? So what is something that is interesting about you that people don't really know about?
Oh, I would say something that people don't know about me that people really don't know is I'm really scared of bugs, but I guess that might be by a lot of women. I have two sons that are really the center of my life with my husband. I don't talk about anything personal. Usually on my social media, I just talk about business, but like a lot of people, a lot of women that are working, your family is so important, but you're always juggling it, juggling how to do it best so that your children are not impacted by your crazy work hours. And especially attorneys, they're almost like 24 hours. Our clients are always contacting us. It's always something that needs to be done.
Yeah.
I don't really talk about my children.
That's fine.
In social media, but that's why I think that's something that people really don't know about.
Okay, cool. So you're a loving mom, love your children, and happily married, which is wonderful. And it's good to always have balance, especially as a successful woman. You want to have that balance. How do you find balance in your life?
Well, when my children were young, what I did was I've had my own firm, either in this form where it's just me, or prior to that I was a partnership. But basically, the children's whole life I've had a firm. So when they were younger, I mostly worked from home, and I tried to work my schedule around my children instead of my children around my schedule. Meaning that I went to all the baseball games, I went to every school event. I was the parent association president for 3 years. I did all of those things, and I tried to, once they were in school, it got a little bit easier. I tried to schedule all my appointments while they were in school so that I could be around when they were home. And but I also always had a babysitter. I couldn't do everything. They were little, but that was really my secret, was to always put the children first. And I remember I had one situation where I was working from home and my son was I guess he was about 5 years old. He was really into these basketball cards. They're just like baseball cards, but they're basketball players. And he came and asked me to look at this card, and I was on the phone with somebody. I told him I called him right back. I looked at the card, and all he wanted to say was like, "Mommy, look at this basketball player. See, in this card, his jersey is this color. But look, it's the same guy. On this card, it's a completely different color." And it was the whole thing. That was the whole thing. It was 2 minutes. And I knew that if I didn't talk to him right then, that moment was going to be gone. Like if I talked to him an hour later, he wasn't going to have that little thing to tell me. And I'll just say the same kid, when he was in college last year, called me up and wanted to tell me something. And I was just walking into a meeting and I went to the call from my son, and it was a very similar thing. It was 5 minutes just to tell me something that just happened in class. And you're never sorry for putting your children first, because that meeting or whatever it is that you're about to do, they're going to still be there 5 minutes later.
Right.
But the moment with your child will be gone. So I think that was really my big lesson, was I always put them first. And I did that because when my older one was around 2 years old, I didn't do that. He kept wanting me to put him to take him up to the nap, and I let the babysitter do it. And the reason he wanted me was get a fever. And I stayed on the phone with this cranky client who's dead. And I was always sorry that I did that. So after that, I said, I'm going to put the kids first. And you're never sorry for doing that.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And I had heard, I forget her name, I think Shonda Rhimes, she had said that she would, when she started her Year of Yes, I don't know if you heard of her book, Year of Yes.
I did.
Yeah. So she said that she was going out to some lavish gala. She was all dolled up in a wonderful, beautiful dress. And her kid was like, "Mommy, play with me." And she was just like, but she stopped and she played with them. And it was like 10 minutes. And then the kid was, over it. But it's like, yeah, you're right. Those little moments. And I remember that from her saying that. And so I started to do what you said. Like if my daughter's like, "Can I just tell you something?" And I'll stop and I'll, mute my phone or what have you. And then it'll be like 30 seconds, although it's like not the biggest emergency, but to her, it was so important. And I agree with you.
Yeah. And when they get older, they'll remember that mom always put me first.
Yeah.
That even though mom was working, she always put me first. They'll always remember that. And it makes them become secure adults.
Yeah.
So that's what we all want.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for that. So you run a firm, and your firm is successful. And you, like you said, you've been doing this for quite some time. There are statistics that show that solo and small firms, they just don't make it long term. So because of people not getting along, or because of the fact that they're too general, or just like not getting, charging the right money, pretty much they're not running it like a business, right? How have you broken that mold? How have you been able to break out of that and see sustained success?
I'd have to say, when I had my first practice, which was a partnership, I really did everything by trial and error. And I would not, and that's a stressful way to run a business. That's not the best way to make it profitable or to advance, to grow. And when I started my own firm again, which was 2012, when I broke up the partnership, I really did it differently. I read every business book I can get my hands on, and we'll talk about business books.
Okay.
I had a lot of them.
Yeah.
But I really made an effort to implement everything. So I really spent a whole year of just reading. I remember I just read every single thing I get my hands on. And then the second year, I said, this is the year I'm going to implement it. So to repeat that, I took a whole year of just trying to learn as much as possible. Because I knew my headset just fell out.
No problem.
I knew how important it was for me to be profitable. And I think that where sole practitioners make the mistake, my headset just fell out. Can you hear me with just
I can hear you with just one.
Okay, I'll try it again. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. This is real life.
When you try to run it all on your own without any game plan, it's like you were driving someplace without a map, or you were driving someplace without a GPS. Nobody uses the map anymore. But you need to know where you're going. where your goal is in order to be able to get there. And you might not need to know every single step at the outside in the beginning, but you do have to know enough to say, I need to learn these different steps. What I did was I read the books. I also talked to other people who have done it, and I listened to everybody's advice. And you're not going to follow everybody's advice, but you're going to follow what resonates with you. And they always say that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just find someone else who did it already and that did it well and do what they. And that's really what made a lot of sense to me. So for soul practitioners, the most important thing to do is there's nothing wrong with being general if you know those areas. If you don't know those areas, especially attorneys, and I can only talk about attorneys, but I think it translates to other businesses. You should do what you do well, and that's what you should be doing. You know, with me, I have a number of different practice areas, but I work with a general practitioner who did those practice areas, and I learned how to do those things. But for example, I don't do criminal law. And if somebody came to me and asked me to represent somebody who just got arrested for a DWI or something, I would refer them to somebody else because I know I don't know that.
Okay.
So I think an important thing for a soul practitioner, know what you know and know what you don't know. And what you don't know, you should refer.
Right.
What you know, you just keep getting better and better at it. The other thing I would say for a soul practitioner is never say you don't have time to learn more, because one of the things I've always done is I want to learn as much as possible in my practice areas at all times. I read every single thing that's coming out. I'm always taking continuing legal education courses. I'm always trying to implement new things that I've learned. If there's a new way to do something or a new form that comes out, I incorporate it into my practice. I'm always looking for ways to be more efficient. And so there's never a point where you say, okay, I already know it, which I think is a mistake that soul practitioners make. I already know that, so I don't have to bother with this. I'm just going to do what I've always done. And then the next thing is you have to know when you need help. So if your business is doing well, and if your business is growing, and if you're getting busier, it's really important to get help. And it doesn't have to be, a lot of soul practitioners will say, I don't have money to get help. Well, you know what? You could start with a clerical person. You could start with having that person be part-time. And what happens is once you have the help, you become more efficient, then you can do more work, and then you can grow to your next step. So I would just say those are the three important things that a soul practitioner should know.
Okay, that was great, great advice. And yes, we've talked about some of these things and how important it is. And I could say that I agree with you, because I know that for me, one of the things that stunted my growth is not getting help. And so I agree with that. And what some things that kind of helped catapult me a little bit is, learning, being diligent about learning, reading, getting more into my craft. And then, like you said, I don't know if you mentioned systems, but I think you mentioned systems, having systems to sort of help you. So how did you, if you didn't mention that, how did systems help you
I did not talk about the systems yet, but you and I have talked about systems many times. So the next step is having systems in place. The systems are just your procedures. So when you're by yourself, you know how you do things. When you start getting help, they don't know how you do things. So you have to write it all down. And that seems very overwhelming to people. People are like, I don't have time. I'm so busy. I'm already working 1 million hours a week. Well, the way you do it is, and the easiest way to do it is, you have a smartphone. They all have dictation that you could dictate. They all have a microphone. You could dictate into your notes. And what you do is, as you're doing whatever it is you're doing, you write down the steps. First, I call this person. Then I follow up with this person. Whatever it is that you do. And it could be, I wrote down procedures for everything, including how to answer my phone. I knew how I wanted my phone answered. And I knew what information they were supposed to get from the person on the phone before it got to me, because otherwise that message was useless. I didn't want to be talking to maybe a salesperson or somebody that didn't meet the criteria necessary in order for them to be a client. So all of those different things that you do that you take for granted when you're doing it yourself, that becomes a procedure for somebody else to learn. And you just write them down one at a time. You don't have to write a book in the beginning. Writing down one procedure at a time. Next thing you know, you'll have a book. And you just did it nowadays, like I said, you can dictate it, copy it from your notes, email it to yourself, save it in your computer. One at a time, you'll have all those procedures written down. And the reason that's important is that you don't want to have somebody that comes in and you teach them everything, but it wasn't written down. You teach them everything, and you're like, great. Now this person knows exactly what to do, and then that person leaves. You're like devastated because you spent all of this time. If you have procedures in place, you can just drop the next person in, and you won't be as slow to tell someone who's not working out that they're not working out because you know that you can get somebody else in to do that job. That's another. I mean, I guess we could talk all day about
that, right? Yeah.
And we all make them, including me. When I first started, I kept people for way longer than I should have. Because I thought they already knew what to do. And even though they were doing all of these other things wrong, they knew how to do this one thing really well. Well, once you have procedures in place, it doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Because first of all, you hire differently. Slow to hire, quick to fire is what we've all heard. But when somebody's not doing the right thing in your job, they can bring down your whole business.
That's
little by little.
True. Yeah.
Quality of what they're doing, it's your reputation. No matter who you have working there, the owner's name is on the door. So you're always going to be the one that's at fault. So you have to make sure that all of your employees, all of your staff are doing it the way you would do it if you were doing it yourself. And systems help that.
Yes. And I wish I had you 8 years ago when I started, but you are really, really telling the truth. Like in the beginning, I was doing everything myself. Like I waited like 4 years before I even brought on a support person, and I didn't document. And so when I started and even when I started hiring people, and then, like you said, if someone doesn't work out and they leave, it's like, oh, now I got to do this all over again. And then I learned, okay, you need to now document every single thing. And once we've done that, you're absolutely right. Like you don't have to worry if somebody leaves, what's going to happen, or can you get someone up to speed, quickly. So totally agree with that. That's excellent, excellent advice.
And the other thing it does for you is that if you tell your staff, this is how I want things done, because you have it written down and because you're giving it to them, they can never say, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Because you gave it to them in writing.
Like go back to, yep.
Yeah. And you can put anything in writing. I even have a list of words not to use. Like that's on everybody's corkboard. Like when they're writing letters, I have certain words that I don't want. I don't like people saying, you need to do this. Like, no, or we need to do that. Telling you need to do it, that's not giving a command. That's not saying this is what has to be done. But if you say, we are required to provide this, well, that's a lot different, because then the client knows that this is something that's required. So it sounds like a little thing. I don't like people saying split. I'd rather say divide. So everybody has their own little things that they want, how they do it. But that's how much you can make sure that your clients have the experience that you want them to have.
Yeah.
And how many letters that you don't have to review 10 times because you're changing those words that you don't like.
Right.
You want your staff to become independent, but you want them also to do the job that you wanted them to do. So,
that's a great way to keep your firm culture, right? To make sure that everybody's feeling the experience that they feel when they talk to you. So I love that. Addition there. So you actually wrote a book, right?
I did.
So tell me a little bit about your book. It's called, go ahead. You could.
You're getting divorced, now what? So I'm a divorce attorney. I also do other practice areas, but divorce is probably 65% of what I do.
Okay.
And what my niche is litigated divorces, the ones where the people don't agree, where they don't get along, and they're going to have to go to court. There's other types of divorces. There's mediation, people may have heard of, where people are agreeing about most things, but not some things, and they go to a mediator. And there's collaborative divorce, where people agree in the beginning that they're going to try to settle this. But a litigated divorce is very different. It's very scary for the people that are going through it. It's very stressful. And over the years, I would talk to my clients, tell them strategies on how to handle what they're going through, which is difficult. I had like 3 or 4 clients saying, you should put this all in writing. You should really put it in a book.
Okay.
And I finally did. So the book is about what to expect when you're going through a litigated divorce. It's for someone who's already decided they're going to get divorced. And then what happens, what they should expect, how do they tell the children, what are they supposed to be looking for as far as dividing things up? How do they do that? How do they handle things emotionally? What to expect on your first court appearance?
Mm-hmm.
What should be in your agreement? I talk about domestic violence, about having a spouse that has substance abuse issues or domestic violence. So I go through a lot of issues, but I do it in not all legal terminology, more in layman terms. And I do it through telling stories of my clients. So it reads more like a novel than a textbook.
Nice.
And I have forms that go along with it so people can help figure things out on their own. So they're Oh my goodness. So just dropped another headphone. So so the first book, like the first chapter is called Guilt, Shame, Fear, Sadness, or Just Pissed Off.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Why did you feel like it was important to start the book with that chapter?
Because when people realize that they're getting divorced, you have this deer in the headlights moment. Like, oh my gosh, this is really happening. How do I deal with this? Like, what do I do? And you can either, even if it's your decision, the death of that marriage, the ending of that marriage is very sad. You know, even if you wanted it, even if you know it's absolutely necessary, because no one gets married planning on getting divorced. So when you realize that happens, some people feel like they're a failure. Some people feel embarrassed. There's all different emotions that you have. And you can't really plan, which you need to do when you're going through a divorce.
Right.
If you're blind with rage, or you can't see through your tears, or any of the other cliches we think about your different types of emotions.
Right.
One of the stories, one of my clients said that after she and her husband broke up, she didn't tell anybody for 4 months. You know, and she didn't invite anyone over, and she made excuses for where her husband was. She was just embarrassed because they hadn't been married for that long, and she thought that it was embarrassing. She didn't want to tell people. And when she told people, they were just completely supportive. So you just don't know. So the first form is called the Get Your Mind Right form.
All right.
That's to identify the emotions that you're feeling, why you're feeling them, and then move on. Because then you can plan. Because you're not a robot. You have to feel your emotions.
Right.
But you can't let them overtake you to the point that you can't plan at all.
Yeah. So it seems like it gives people clarity on where they are, what they're actually feeling. Sometimes you don't even know like what you really feel because you never took a moment to like really think about it. So
true.
Yeah. So do you find that it's helpful for your clients? Like, do you put them through this?
Well, I don't give it to all of my clients. I give it to some of them in the beginning, and they love it.
Okay.
I've had people who read the book and then came to me and told me that because of the book, they were able to resolve a lot of the issues. You know, they knew what they had to talk about.
Right.
And they just felt that it was really helpful. So people going through it, what it does is it gives you the experience of what to expect. Because the fear of the unknown is the thing that's most debilitating, like not knowing what to expect. People know what to expect, what the judge might be like at the first court appearance. It's not personal. How to deal with a spouse still being horrible, what to look out for so your children aren't alienated from you or from your spouse, what you're supposed to be saying to your children, or even what to be in your divorce agreement to protect you later on. When people have that information, they don't feel like they're going in there blind, and they find it so helpful. I mean, I sometimes tell people, look at chapter 7, you know, because, you know, it'll help you. And they usually come back feeling calmer to know that they're not the only ones that this is happening, so that this is the type of thing that happens.
I agree. That's good. So it sort of serves like a blueprint of the process for your clients to also like help them. And I find that too, like when my clients know like the whole entire process and what to expect, they're so much more at ease. So I could, but even for people who are not, who maybe you started on your own, or maybe this is something that you know is going to happen, but you haven't started the process. It's good for anyone to pick up this book and sort of read it to kind of get familiar with the process and get that calm and clarity.
Yes, thank you. Because sometimes if you're thinking of divorce, just knowing what's up ahead, it'll help you to decide if you want to go forward or you don't want to go forward, because it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you find that people think about divorce?
That if they're being reasonable, the other side, their spouse is going to be reasonable too, and that doesn't happen. If in a contested divorce, I should say. So everybody knows it takes two sides to come to an agreement, right? You both have to agree to come to an agreement.
Right.
But usually what happens is one person says, this is all I'm asking for. This is completely reasonable. There's no reason for them to disagree. But what they don't understand is that, especially when it was an abusive relationship, once the relationship is over and you're not together, the abusive spouse is abused about control. So how are they going to control you now? They're going to control you by not agreeing to anything that you want.
Right.
You know, so they don't agree. And it becomes very difficult, and it's so hard for them to understand. Like, they just think that if I'm reasonable, of course they should agree. The other big misconception is that if they were the president of the child's PTA, if they are, you know, the coaching every kid, you know, the kids, you know, all their sporting things, and they did everything that way, that the judge is going to look at them and say, parent of the year, you are 100% right, and your spouse is 100% wrong. And that does not happen. You know, people come in and they say, my spouse is abuses substances. They have mental illness. They don't take care of the children where I do. I am super parent. I was coaching everything. I did everything right. I never did all of those things. The judge did see that, but the judge doesn't do that. The judge puts everybody on an even playing field. So even if those things happen, if your spouse had a history of substance abuse, if they have those issues under control right now, that's all the court cares about. They're not going to hold it against them. And that's a very difficult thing for people to understand. Like, they don't understand why that is. And the reason it happens is that the judge does not do anything without evidence. You know, the judge is not going to go forward. Even if that's what you're saying about your spouse, they're going to wait and see what develops. If you say they're using substances, they're going to do a drug test, or to see if they're under the influence. If you're saying that they're not keeping the kids safe, well, they're going to assign an attorney for that child, and they'll have a court-ordered investigation done by Child Protective Services to see if that's true. And spouse are just like, no, I'm telling them, I've lived it, I know it, and they think that should be enough, but that's not enough.
And so
basically,
no problem. With that, what happens when people are not telling the truth? Because I've had a little bit of experience in divorce, and I know that it can get really ugly. People sometimes, you know, try their best to find evidence, so they'll say things that are not true. And so what happens? How does the court look at that?
Well, the court does not look kindly on people manufacturing evidence or saying things that aren't true, or trying to get their children to say things and recording them and saying, look what the child said. You know, everything comes out in the evidence. And I've done many trials where people have tried to say one thing, but we had an email or a text message years before where they said the opposite, and it wasn't true. So usually you can find it. An attorney who does their work and does their investigation will usually be able to find what the truth is and where the inconsistencies are. So it's never a good idea. You're much better off telling the truth and being, being straightforward and being truthful to your attorney. Because if you don't tell the attorney what's going on and the attorney finds out later, it doesn't help your case. It just affects credibility. So that's a big issue. I'm glad you brought it up, because people, I'm not gonna let them know about that issue that I had years ago. I'll just tell them about how wonderful I am now. But really, the best way for your attorney to advocate for you is to know everything, because there's nothing wrong with having mental illness. There's nothing wrong with having a history of substance abuse, as long as you're managing it now. If you're maintaining your sobriety, if you're taking medications for your mental illness, you are absolutely entitled to see your child, as long as your child's going to be safe and you're not, it's not like the scarlet letter that you have for the rest of your life. As long as you're keeping those things under control, the court says that you do have the right to see your child, and they will not hold it against you forever. It's only if those things are not under control that it's a problem.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because that may be something that people don't realize, and they may run from being truthful with their attorney or being truthful about situations because they're like ashamed of it, or they feel like it's going to hurt them, when it's better to be able to deal with the circumstances that are at hand. At least you can do something about it. if as their attorney, or if it's out there, there's usually a work around it, as long as, like you said, they're being productive and and working
And I would
towards
think it's also true about domestic abuse and even child abuse. If you have a history of it that happened in the past, but you addressed it by taking parenting classes or anger management classes or going to a therapist and addressing whatever your issues were, then all of that, as long as you have it under control, you will be able to see your children. So I think people are worried about not. I just had that recently. She
it.
didn't tell me about something that happened a little bit different. Her other child that wasn't a child of this relationship, but it was important for me to know
Yeah.
because there was something in the child abuse registry, and I can't explain it away if I'm not told about it.
Mm-hmm.
Your attorney. That's why it's so important who you choose as your attorney,
Mm-hmm.
because not no pun intended, but it's like a marriage. So you have
Right.
to choose the right attorney that you are comfortable with, that you trust, that you can be truthful with, not someone that you feel is judging you. Your attorney should never be judged. It should be a no judgment zone.
Yeah.
And it's important because if you're not comfortable with that attorney, you're not going to tell them everything. And you have to, in order for the attorney to be your strongest advocate, especially if you're going through litigation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for all that on divorce. That is super, super helpful. So I wanted to talk about, because we sort of like vibe on the whole mindset and bettering yourself and self-help and all that good stuff. So how did you become so just like sure of your success? Because like I'll talk to Sandra this month, she'll say, I'm gonna do this, I'm thinking about this. Next month she's like, I did it. So she's once she decides to do something, she's on it and successful at it. So how did you get to that space?
I say there's two things.
Mm-hmm.
One, before you make any decision, you always have to research and see if it's something that you want to do. So a lot of that comes from all the business decisions I make, the process. I use something called the Entrepreneurial operating system for my firm,
Okay.
Which is discussed in a book called Traction, which you know all about.
Right.
I told you about it.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, it has you not only put systems in place, but decide what the core values are for your company, and then you hire and fire based on the core values.
Okay.
Once you have that strong system in place, because now you have all the right people in the right seat, which is what the book talks about.
Mm-hmm.
You have like staff that you can really count on that are becoming independent and productive, then you're able to do the next thing. But as far as decision making is the most important thing you can do in your business. You have to be able to make decisions. And how do you make decisions? Only with knowledge. Because when you're nervous, when you're not sure about something, it's because you don't have enough information. So you can't always get all of the information that you need on your own. So you have to find other people that help you to get that information. So the ways that one of the things that you do in a business that's growing, it's getting bigger office space, hiring more people, finding how you're going to do that, right? How that's going to look.
Yeah.
Usually the hiring more people comes first. So like I said, you can hire, if you feel that you don't have the means to hire someone, you can start off with hiring part-time and start hiring a clerical person before you hire an attorney, because you don't realize how much of a difference those clerical decisions are. Then maybe you hire someone who's at a higher level, a legal assistant, who can do more than what the clerical person can do. And with each thing, you're delegating more and more. One of the things it says in the book is delegate and elevate. Once you delegate things to confident people, you can elevate. So when you have the information that you need and you're making that decision, such as I'm making a decision to hire somebody, you have to first know, what am I going to have that person do if I hire them? Because the thing that'll stop you from that decision is not knowing what they would do. I'm so busy. I need to hire somebody. I don't know who would hire. I wouldn't even know what they would do anyway, because I'm the only one that knows how to do everything.
Right. Or you have to also train them, and you don't have the time.
Or you have to train them. So that goes back to the system. So if you ask me, how do I make the decisions? I have things in place that allow me to make the decisions. So the other thing that the entrepreneurial operating system does, it makes you always know your numbers. How many cases do you have? How much money do you need to make in order to have the new office, to hire people? And then maybe another consideration is, if I hire someone, will that enable me to make more money because I'm processing things so much quicker and it'll allow me to get paid quicker.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that have to be in place in order for you to make a decision. But the number one thing is knowledge. And you keep making it smaller and smaller. What knowledge and information do I need? Well, each thing that you want to do, such as if you were looking for new office space, how much space do I need? Where do I want to be located? How many employees do I have now, and do I want to grow from there? What kind of a building do I want? Do I need it to be a very secure building, or does it not matter? What location do I need it to be in? So once you have the answers to those questions, then you can make a decision, because then when you find it, if it checks all those boxes, you can make that decision. You can't make the decision if you don't know the other ingredients. So
Right.
I think that's my secret sauce.
The
Is
secret sauce.
doing the research first.
Okay. Which makes a lot of sense. It's almost like you have a decision-making checklist, right? So if
Right.
if you follow the process, then you can always, make your decisions easily without sort of second guessing. I'm actually reading a book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And
Oh,
you read
that's
it
my
before?
favorite.
Oh, awesome.
But I love Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's so good. And it really talks about, it talks a lot about being decisive and definite in your decisions, and how being indecisive is the thief of success. And so you can imagine when you don't make those decisions, then it takes longer. And you
it's
obviously,
paralyzing. It's
absolutely.
paralyzing. When you can't make a decision, you're stuck in one place.
Yeah.
When you make a decision, and the best way to start getting better at making decisions is to make decisions about small things,
Mm-hmm.
the things you already do. So you just start with those small things, and then you move. The decision could just be how you're going to rearrange the furniture in your office to make it more efficient,
Right.
make more room for somebody else before you move into a new office. Be
Mhm.
something that small. And when you start doing that as the owner, your job, I had a business coach once. He said, as your owner, what you should be doing is you should be straightening out the frame on the wall, the picture frame on the wall. You should make sure everything's in place and make sure everybody's doing their job. And every time I do that, I think of what he said, because you're the most efficient way as an owner is that you can delegate almost everything that you do, so that you're doing that really higher level work.
Right.
So one question he told me to always ask myself whenever I did anything, is this your highest and best use?
Mm.
So your highest and best use as the owner is going to do the more high level things. You're going to be client facing, you're going to be talking to bigger clients, and maybe more of the routine things you want to be able to delegate. So that requires a decision,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
About what you're going to be delegating, and what can somebody else be doing, because that's not your highest and best use. And when you start putting these little processes into place, you're going to find little by little you are making those decisions, and then you're ready for the next decision.
Awesome, awesome. Do you ever, because it seems like you're always so you always have it together. Do you ever experience fear in things that you're doing, or do you feel like that's something you've outgrown?
All the time I experience fear, but I listen to somebody. Her name is Belle Robbins,
Okay.
and she said that when you get nervous, that you experience sweaty palms, your heart rate quickens, you might start breathing a little bit faster.
Mm.
And when you get excited, you get sweaty palms and you breathe a little quicker and your heart rate increases. So whenever you feel nervous, you say, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. And I say it all the time. I'm
Right.
not nervous, I'm excited. And it really works. It really works because it changes your mindset. It
Mm.
changes, like, I'm not scared, I'm excited. And the other thing is that preparation is the key for any time you're nervous.
Mm.
As a business owner, if you're going to be, as an attorney, if you're going to be going to court, if you're going to be meeting with a client, if you're going to be speaking to somebody, being prepared is the key to everything. Because if you're
right.
not prepared, then you're going to feel nervous.
Mm-hmm.
What if the client asked me about this and I didn't look into it?
Mm-hmm.
So I over prepare for everything. I just, I know everything in my file. And I told my kids this once that, now we don't go to in-person court because it's mostly virtual court because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We used to go to in-person court. They scheduled everything for the same time. And you really just sat around for a long time.
Right.
And I would see the other attorneys, they'd be reading the newspaper, they'd check their phone. I would be looking at my file.
Mm.
So when we got back to the chambers and the judge asked about the case, I didn't have to look at my file. I would just be able to say, this is the date of the accident. This is, the date of the marriage, how many children they have, this everything. And the other attorney would be shuffling through their files because you know what? They were reading the newspaper instead of looking at their file. And I said, I wasn't the smartest attorney in the room. I was the most prepared attorney in the room. And I told my kids that, like, that's the most important thing is to be prepared. You don't have to be, you're going to be in the room with all these different people who maybe have higher credentials than you, or maybe went to some well-regarded school that you didn't go to. But at the end of the day, you're doing the same job. And if you're the most prepared one, you're always going to be doing the best job. And that's the key to everything.
That's great. That's great advice. I love that. Being prepared overcomes. And I've actually been doing that same thing where you said you're not afraid, you're just excited.
And I'm not nervous. I'm excited.
I'm not nervous. I'm just excited. Because I noticed that, I mean, through sort of doing self-work, but I noticed that it's the same emotion. So I'll just tell myself, like, this is energy that I could use towards what I'm about to do. It's not fear, So that's awesome. That's awesome.
And then it becomes exciting.
Yeah.
And it becomes exciting. You don't have to worry about how it's going to happen. You just know it's going to happen.
Absolutely.
And that's it. Then you move on from that emotion. And a little bit of fear, it's not bad, because if the fear works to make you become more prepared, if fear works to make you do a little bit more research, if the fear works to make you sure that you have all your ducks in a row before you do something, that's not a bad thing. It's just to recognize it and then move on, and don't let it paralyze you. Let it be your motivator, the adrenaline, call it adrenaline instead of fear. Say, okay, I know what I have to do tomorrow because I know that I'm not ready for this yet, but tomorrow I'm going to go in and I'm going to do A through Z to make sure that I am ready.
Okay. That is awesome. I love that. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for this for this conversation, Sandra. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
It's been great. It went so quick.
It did. It went very, very, very quick.
You're an excellent day interviewer. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So how can people find you if they want to connect?
Well, I guess the easiest way is to go to my website, which is www.radnalaw.com, RADNALAW.com. I have offices on Long Island and in Manhattan, and all my contact information is there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.